Now we turn to number 6 in our series on God's love and justice. This is entitled, indeed, God's love of justice. And I want to point out from the very beginning that justice is there in the Greek that is translated in the New Testament. The word really means to do right, righteousness, and so on. In fact, the King James doesn't even use the word justice because it prefers to talk about God doing what is right. You see, the problem all too often in our English understanding of the word justice is that is some kind of legal process that has to be done. And surely enough, in our world, that's what justice is very often all about. And we also say that God does love, but he also has to be just, as though love and justice are in opposition somehow. No, when God does exhibit justice, if you want, it's him doing right, and he does that because of his love. It's not a differential there. There is no difference between God acting in these ways. He's consistent. He always does what is right. If you look at the biblical material and see what it says, Psalm 33 verse 5, he, that's the Lord, loves all that is good and right. Goodness, righteousness, and peace have kissed each other. Deuteronomy 32:4 says that God is fair and right and honest. Everything that's good comes from God, says James 1:17. And Exodus 32:14 talks about God changing his mind, not sending disaster, because he does what is right. And in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus also talks about doing what is right. And in Jeremiah 9:24, I am the Lord who acts with trustworthy love, who shows fairness, and who does what is right everywhere on earth, because these mean the most to me. Yes, it's God doing what he knows and believes and how he is right. There are two words in the Hebrew, mishpat and tzedakah, as I've put there in the notes so you can understand them. The first one is to do with treating people equally, equal under the law, if you want to say it that way. And tzedakah is closest to that meaning of doing what is right, dikaiosune in the Greek, meaning I do what is fair and right, acting in a way that is generous and honest. And that is a very good description of God. That's why together they're often used. Let justice, well, that's mishpat, flow like a river, and doing right, tzedakah, like an ever-flowing stream, says Amos 5:24. That parallelism shows that those two words are complementary. God does what is right. For us, experiencing justice usually often has a negative connotation to it, that you think that I am experiencing the sentence or the punishment, and that is part of what justice is really all about. God does reward people. In the end, he says, I will judge fairly and rightly. And those who have not chosen to follow the Lord will experience the consequences of doing that. But it's not God condemning them and sentencing them in this very legal way. It's saying, okay, you have your choice and you've chosen to go away from me, and that is going to be your final end. He weeps over those who go the wrong way. He's not wagging his finger at them and saying, I am the one who is imposing justice here. He simply is saying, I'm doing what is fair and true and right. Do you see? And especially when we come to talk about the sacrifice of Jesus, that was for us to persuade us, not to persuade the Father. Some say that the Father demanded this payment, or that justice demanded a payment. But that's completely unjust. I put in the notes for this time that quote from Barclay, and I think it really is true, that how could it really be that God is the one who does this? He is the one who is doing what is right. In order to satisfy his justice, says Barclay, God had to do the unjustest thing this world has ever seen, that in order to satisfy his holy justice, he punished the only perfectly good man that ever was, his own beloved son. I began to feel I could not believe in a God like that, or trust a God who did such a thing. And I will want to say amen to that. That's not the way that justice operates. That's not the way that God operates. And we need to talk about God in ways that speak well of him.